The first decade of the collapse, 2021 to 2030. For a while, they buried the bodies in mass graves with bulldozers. The National Guard had been deployed since the imposition of martial law. When the disease spread and the bodies became too many, they just burned them in houses, sometimes a whole block at a time. The electricity failed in August. In a week, the gasoline supplies ran out, and the smell of carrion in the cities was overpowering. Corpses lined the street where people had carried them out of their houses and apartments, while there were still enough people who wanted to do that. Occasional helicopters flew over the cities, telling people to stay in their houses. Nobody had any better idea. Dogs ate at the corpses, and some people shot at the dogs. Others, in frustration, shot at the helicopters. 2021 had been the hottest summer on record, even topping 2020. The power grid had been stretched to the breaking point for weeks. The strategic oil reserves had been depleted the year before, an election year, though the election was never held. The government had imposed rationing, though it didn't extend to private jets or to the Air Force. The stock market closed. Paper wealth disappeared overnight. The disease struck the National Guard as hard as everyone else. Actually, the guardsmen stayed on the job longer than the corporate security armies protecting the wealthy suburbs, who equaled them in numbers. The guardsmen had a sense, at least a little sense, of legitimacy and loyalty to a cause beyond themselves. In the 21st century, no one looked upon the corporation as the East India Company, as the spearhead of progress, for whom the noble were willing to die. Nonetheless, by the end of August, most of the guardsmen had deserted to escape the cities, or to try to find their families. One by one, the power plants went dark. Another kind of funeral pyre with no one to light it and keep it burning. Nobody agreed on the precise nature of the pandemic. The government blamed an Asian influenza. Doctors said it was a new kind of chickenpox or smallpox. There was a rumor that the disease was an army bug, a genetically engineered biological weapon that had backfired, perhaps brought back by soldiers returning from the oil fields in Central Asia. The disease certainly spread with an engineered efficiency. 200 million died in the United States in the first month. Most agreed the power outage started in the Southwest and then spread from there. In California, the pumping stations went down. Los Angeles was without water, as was San Diego and most other large cities. The pandemic showed no signs of abating. People were still getting sick. The cities were the worst. Dysentery was widespread. There were rumors of typhus. Nobody wanted to risk infection. Nobody wanted to be around other people. In Central California, the owner of a 40,000-acre ranch tried to protect the sovereignty of private property by shooting 2 trespassers, and was killed by the 3rd. By October, the population of the United States was about 50 million. Many had survived the disease, if crippled or blinded, but the disruption was complete. Sometimes whole families had escaped the infection. Sometimes whole families had died together. Mostly, the world had become widows, widowers, and orphans. There were no workers. Small groups of police operated as armed bands for their own benefit, pillaging and killing those who resisted. Regiments of the regular army were still functioning, but without electricity or fuel, they had no clear objective. They couldn't find the people needed to bring back the power grid. Central leadership disintegrated or was ignored. Entire regiments went AWOL. Rumors of a refugee camp at Vandenberg Air Force Base sparked a mass immigration from Santa Maria. Thousands streaming 25 miles down Highway 1 through Casmalia onto the base. A colonel ordered his command to fire on the crowds to keep them out. Nobody obeyed his orders. The crowd swamped the base and refused to leave. After 10 days, they were too weak to leave. In Lompoc, 200 forgotten prisoners in lockdown died in their cells.